Hello and welcome to our Business Roots chat. I'm here today with Ian Stevenson, the CEO of Cyacomb and also the co-founder and chair of Ostia, which is the Online Safety Tech Industry Association. Ian, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm blissful, as always. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So tell us, first of all, what's Cyacomb?
So Cyacomb is a technology company. It's based in Edinburgh. We spun out of Edinburgh Napier University. That's where the technology comes from. And what we do is we build technology to help law enforcement, social media and cloud companies find and block nasty content. So that can be child abuse, that can be terrorism, that can be racism, non-consensual intimate images or revenge porn, all of the bad stuff. We help them to find that so it can be blocked, so perpetrators can be prosecuted.
Wow. So a very kind of honourable route to a business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to the whole team that we're doing something. I mean, we're trying to build an amazing and profitable business, but we're also trying to do something that has real positive impact in the world.
Yeah, sure. And you're the CEO?
Yeah, that's right. So I got involved in this when it was still a university project. I was sort of fascinated by the technology. I saw a commercial opportunity. So myself and one of the research teams spun it out.
Okay. Now, obviously this is a roots to business chat. I'm assuming that as a small boy, the young Ian Stevenson didn't say to himself, well, what I'm going to do when I'm older is I'm going to be CEO of a tech company that does all this good stuff. So what was your dream when you were a kid?
So quite young, I got interested in sort of electronics, and then as computers started to come along, I don't know if you had something like a ZX Spectrum. That's the one we
Commodore 64.
There you go. There's always a divide there. Well, we were a Spectrum family, so I then started getting interested in programming computers as well. And I've always just loved building things and making things work. So that was really the path I set out on in life, sort of where my focus was at school and then later at university.
So you did actually go down the technology route. Your objective, as it were, or your dream was to do something with the interest that you had in technology.
Yes, that's right. So I went to university. I did a degree in computer science and electronic engineering. It doesn't get much more geeky or technology focused than that, really. And my first jobs, both before, during, and after university, were all focused around, doing things with technology rather than business.
And what were those first jobs after university?
So my first job after university was with actually it was a spin out of Edinburgh University called VLSI Vision Limited. And that company had a way of making camera microchips that were far smaller and lower cost than anything available at the time. So it really started the revolution that now sees our phones having multiple cameras in them by producing those low cost compact devices. And we did things like early webcams. We did some stuff for sort of number plate recognition and things like that. We did some toy products, which were great fun. We built one of the more successful and high-profile products of my career was the Intel QX3 toy microscope. They still change hands on eBay for more money than they cost new, because they're so great for schools to sort of show large classes what's going on. And the other product in the same family was the first Barbie camera. So highs and lows.
And you're also a Saltire Fellow.
Yes, that's right. So my first few jobs were entirely technology focused, but I started to realize through doing them that there were lots of people who were really good at technology, but not many of them could also talk to other people in the business. So I often ended up being the bridge between the software team and the chip design team, or the chip design team and the board design, and sort of providing this sort of communications function. And sort of through doing that, I got more and more involved in things that sort of spanned the business. And at some point, I realized that everything I was doing in engineering, I had these really solid foundations from my degree. And everything I was doing on the business side, which was an increasing part of my role, I was making up as I went along. And so I was looking for a way to give myself the same sort of education and foundation in business as I had in engineering. And I looked at various things. I did a few sort of training courses run by professional bodies and things like that. And I started thinking about doing an MBA. I mean, at that time, a lot of them were very focused on the sort of banking sector and things like that. Tech wasn't the thing it is now. Nobody was doing tech-focused MBAs, really. So it all struck me as sort of quite academic and not that. A lot of it didn't feel that relevant to my work. And then the Saltire Foundation came along, which was really focused on entrepreneurial business as opposed to the next generation of managers in really big business. And that really resonated with me.
So you joined and I think you were one of the early ones, weren't you? This whole time.
I was part of the first cohort.
So your very first
2009,
cohort, right? Yeah. Okay, and you went there, and that part of that, as I understand it, is a project you do out in the States.
Yeah, that's right. So there were three components. We got a 4 months at business school in the US. Then we got a placement with a company in the US through the sort of Scottish diaspora network to do something that was completely different from our previous careers. So I went to work for Sun Microsystems in Palo Alto. So in the technology sector, so sort of using my knowledge of that sector, but the role I was in was at the sort of boundaries of marketing and channel management. So we were building systems to help distribute leads to channel partners and then monitor what happened with them, which was, sort of completely outside my previous technical focused experience, and a wonderful opportunity to work with a whole bunch of different people and put in practice some of the skills I'd learned at business school.
Excellent. And do you think the Saltire Fellowships helped you to get to where you are today?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. It's given me both the education and the confidence on the business side that I sort of had the equivalent of on the engineering side already. And it's also, it's an amazing network. And through getting the opportunity to do some things on placements, you start to build that experience that gives you the confidence and the credibility to do things that make
absolutely. And you've introduced me to a few of your contacts within the Saltire Fellowship, and they've always been kind of the same vein as you. They have that entrepreneurial spirit, they have that technological spirit, they're business focused, all of that kind of stuff. So it seems to be a really good thing. What about challenges? What about the things that have held you back, do you think?
Goodness. I think one of the biggest changes for me has been that I came from a very technology background. And in the early part of my career, I was really focused on things like technology and data and evidence. And I possibly wasn't as aware of softer skills and people skills.
Right.
And so I wouldn't necessarily say that held me back, but it was certainly one of the hardest things to develop and change and learn. And that's partly just because it's a real skill set, and a lot of your training is about that. So you have to put in the time and effort to learn that. But it's also about mindset. It's about shifting a mindset from thinking about whether something is right or wrong, or evidence-based or not evidence-based, or whatever, into thinking about how somebody else is perceiving a situation and trying to take them on a journey.
You don't always have to prove it.
Yes.
You don't always have to have that kind of black and white data, and sometimes it's about kind of feelings, and that's a big part of business, right? With particularly your position in the business, because you've got a team of people that you now lead. Because Cyacom's now getting quite large. How many people have you got now?
Yeah, we've got about 36 at the moment.
36, some in the States.
Yes, we have 4 in the States.
4 in the States, some over here, and you're about to go into Europe, or you've been into Europe.
Well, we do work in Europe, but we do most of that out of the UK at the moment.
Right.
So we'll look at putting staff there when the time's right. But yeah.
Excellent. And that has grown over. Remind me, how many years has Cyacomb been in existence?
So it's about 6 years now. So it's been a while. When you take a university technology, the first stage of the development of the company is really just proving that technology can exist outside a university lab, then starting to prove to people that it might do something interesting. So we started with quite a small team, but once we started getting feedback from the market that the technology did something useful, that's when it
started to roll.
Absolutely.
Oh, and are you surprised at kind of how fast it's grown and where you are? When you first started this business, with Bruce and a couple of other people, was your expectation for it to grow this quickly?
So I think I'm kind of in two minds about that, right? So one part of me is incredibly proud of what we've achieved and delighted that it's grown at the rate it has. There's another part of me that says this has been a long and at times hard journey, and it should have done twice as much. And I suppose there's a third aspect, which is that, starting a business is fundamentally an irrational act.
Yes.
It's the act of an optimist, because statistically, yes, most businesses fail. So there's also a part of me that's just constantly surprised that we're still here and we're beating the odds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about OSTIA, the Online Safety Tech Industry Association.
Yeah, so Cyacomb started out focused on the law enforcement market,
Yes.
with our kind of digital breathalyzer to help find evidence on suspects' computers. But as that started succeeding, we could also see our technology could apply to platforms upstream, so to finding content on social media platforms before it turned into a criminal offence, before it caused problems. So as we started seeing that technology potential, I started trying to meet people in the sector and understand how that sector works. It's quite different to the digital forensics market. And what I found over a period of time was I was having lots of great conversations with people, all of whom were talking about what other people had said and what other people were doing. Yeah. And there was basically this circus of meetings taking place where nobody was talking directly to each other, yeah. But we were all having one-to-one conversations. So we set up a sort of round table to pull some of these people together and try and have a collective conversation instead of individual ones. And that was people both from the world of sort of government and policy, because regulation is really important in that space, yeah. From and from the safety tech sector, from companies that are building technologies for online safety. And one of the things that came out of that round table was government wanted more input from industry, but it's really hard for government to listen to individual companies. There's a sort of conflict of interest there. And we all wanted we had many common issues that we wanted to be able to discuss together on the industry side. So we decided to form the Online Safety Tech Industry Association to facilitate all of that. And we have, I think, about 40 members now. We started out with a focus on the UK, but we've got quite an international membership now. Lots of international companies have come in. And we work closely with both industry, helping companies support each other and collaborate, but also...
So it's an industry body that didn't exist.
That's exactly before. Right.
So you saw this as an opportunity and said, look, actually, we and it's a safety thing, so we should be speaking to each other because it's important we keep everyone safe out there online.
Yeah.
And you saw that opportunity, you built it. It's taking opportunities or being given opportunities been a big part of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. People talk a lot about luck. Mm-hmm. And I think luck is hugely important. And I've had a huge amount of luck in my life, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I think there's also something about being open to opportunity. You know, you can hear these... that's a great example of something you can look at the situation and you can think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if there was an industry association? Or you can look at the situation and think, wouldn't it be nice if there was an industry association? I wonder if we could get consensus to build something. So I sort of see myself as being quite opportunistic. I try to always be looking for things that create an opportunity to sort of develop personally, like doing the Saltire Fellowship, to develop professionally, and to build new organisations.
And what's next for Ian Stevenson and for Cyacomb?
Goodness, I mean, I don't know. So some of it is more of the same. We'll keep growing the law enforcement business and keep getting that into more countries. The online safety business is just starting to get real traction. And I think we're at a real point of inflection in terms of the online world. The internet, like so many new technologies, has been created as a force for good,
yes,
with excellent intentions, and it's delivered an amazing amount of good. But we've also started really over the last few years as a society understanding that it enables lots of bad things too. And unfortunately, it looks like it's going to take government regulation to do much about that. And that government regulation is just starting to come in.
Because it wasn't needed before.
Exactly. And the analogy I often like to think about is car safety. You know, the creation of the car transformed the physical and social landscape of the world. But also a lot of people died in car accidents. Mm-hmm. And the car manufacturers tended to say, well, that's just the price of having this amazing thing. We're focused on building, shinier and faster and nicer and cheaper cars. And it wasn't until 1960s, I think, a book, Unsafe at Any Speed, sort of said, hang on, some cars are killing more people than others. It is possible to make some cars safer. And most of the people dying are dying in the same way, which could be quite easily solved with some simple things like seatbelts.
Seatbelts, yeah.
The automobile industry resisted, governments regulated, and seatbelts started saving a massive number of lives. I mean, can you imagine today going to buy a car and it not having seatbelts?
My first car didn't have seatbelts.
Right, okay. Well,
My Series 1 Land Rover was my first car and it didn't have seatbelts. And we used to drive around in it. And I remember my pal's mum finding out about kind of 6 months down the line and going absolutely crazy.
yeah, I mean, I remember as a child my dad fitting seatbelts to my mum's Mini, drilling holes in the metal to install.
Yeah.
But the first seatbelts went in, the evidence proved they were working. And if you fast forward, if you think about car advertising in the 90s or noughties, it was all about Euro NCAP crash tests and side impact bars and how many airbags can you fit in a car and still make something that drives. So it created that inflection point where suddenly people realised that dying wasn't a natural side effect of cars existing. It was something that was a risk that could be mitigated. And I think we're just on the cusp of that transition in the online world. And that creates a huge opportunity for Cyacomb and for the sector as a whole.
Okay. Now imagine you've walked into this room and sitting there is the young Ian Stevenson. He's playing on his Spectrum, wishing for a Commodore 64.
Of course.
With the rubber keys, pressing the rubber keys. He's playing on a Spectrum. What advice would you give to that young person now? What would you tell him to watch out for? What would you tell him to? Which opportunities would you tell him to take? What kind of thing would you say to him?
So I'm really happy with my life. So I look back at everything and it happened for a reason. So I think I'd look over the young Ian Stevenson tapping away on his Spectrum's keyboards and just go, you know what? Get on with it. But I think that thing about opportunity is really important. And I'm certain there are opportunities I've missed because I didn't understand there were opportunities. So if I was forced to say something to my younger self, it would probably just be sort of turn up the radar for opportunities and give things a go.
That's excellent advice. Well, thank you for that, Ian. That was a great chat. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to all you for joining us on this Business Roots chat as well. We've got plenty more of these conversations out there and you can find them on your normal podcast platforms. But for now, thank you for joining us. Thank you to Ian from Cyacomb and I'll see you all soon.